In today's rapidly evolving world, innovation is paving the way towards growth and sustainability. Ranging from energy and resource sustainability to healthcare and education, innovation has the power to enhance all aspects of our society. Qatar is taking great strides becoming a hub for innovation with an ecosystem that supports every step from testing to scaling globally. By fostering tech-based industries and cutting-edge research, Qatar will become an international hub for innovation and development. Qatar Economic Forum's Innovation Day, in partnership with Qatar Research, Development and Innovation Council, brings together thought leaders from across the globe. From equitable distribution to ethical implications, our discussions transcend borders, shaping a future that's inclusive and sustainable. We welcome you to be a part of this conversation and join us on Thursday, May 16th for the Qatar Economic Forum Innovation Day, sponsored by Qatar Research, Development and Innovation Council.
And as a patriot, my main value is the well-being of my people. My people must be safe. My people must not be hungry. My people must have a good life. That is the dream of every patriot, of every country in the world.
So the transition is happening. It's serious. You know, last year we built in the world 550 gigawatts of renewables, but it's still not enough.
So the requirement for power from fossil fuels is going to be there, and is going to be there for a very long time.
We started out with a very narrow solution set focused on wind and solar and EVs, and assumed that that would address the total set of the issue, and it doesn't.
We haven't announced this yet, Do you want to announce it right now?
We will, yes, we are at the final stage of an equity investment in an airline in the southern part of Africa.
We're talking about the challenges in connecting the African continent. They're challenges, but they're also opportunities.
So you have to acknowledge the fact that you're going to be wrong a lot and just make sure you're building a resilient portfolio, which you really didn't quite need in the previous decade, but you will need in the next decade.
This is something that I actually see our investors and clients starting to recognize, that the U.S.-China tension is going to remain, and they're going to have to start investing with that lens.
What's the state of deal-making for sports right now, if you had to distill it?
Well, I'll distill it in one word: bubble.
There is a lack of liquidity still in certain areas, and there's huge liquidity coming from this region, and it'd be nice to see this region more into the NFL and the US.
The number one thing is you got to be patient. Anything really good takes a little bit of time. Winning is clearly the most important thing. So we're focused on winning.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Jumana Bersetchi.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sabah al-khair, sayyidati wa sadati. Welcome to the last day of the Qatar Economic Forum, our Innovation Day, brought to you by the Qatar Research, Development and Innovation Council. Innovations in technology are propelling us into a new era of discovery. From green technology to AI, fintech, and cybersecurity. And up ahead, we will examine the promises and perils of the cutting-edge technologies changing our lives. But before that, a few other notes. We would love for you to engage with us, to ask one of our speakers a question or to respond to one of our live audience polls. Please scan the QR code on the screen right now. And you can also find us on social media using the hashtag Qatar Economic Forum. And at Bloomberg.com, we cover all of the topics we've discussed here at QEF and much, much more. So if you would like to see more of our coverage, we are providing a complimentary 3-month corporate subscription for you and your team. So scan the QR code now also on the screen to learn more about that. Now, in addition to our innovation partner, QRDI, I'd like to thank all of our official partners, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry of the State of Qatar, and Media City Qatar, and our premier sponsors, the Qatar Investment Authority and QNB. Now, let's get the program started with the Secretary General of the QRDI Council, Engineer Omar Ali Al-Ansari.
Please welcome to the stage Engineer Omar Ali Al-Ansari, Secretary General of the QRDI Council.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, peace be upon you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to welcome each of you to this special Innovation Day at the 4th edition of the Qatar Economic Forum. As we gather here from near and far, we unite under a common vision of shaping the future through innovation. Here at the Qatar Research, Development and Innovation, QRDI, we are tasked with a noble mandate to harness global technological advancements and foster homegrown innovation to enhance the resilience and economic prosperity of Qatar. Our commitment, however, extends beyond mere technological advancements and achievements. We advocate for responsible innovation, where we aim for true progress that is inclusive and equitable, supporting innovation for all and not just for a few. Throughout history, technological innovations have sculpted the landscape of our society. These innovations have propelled us forward, dramatically transforming our way of life globally. From medical breakthroughs that have extended life expectancies worldwide to advancements in information and technology that have bridged cultures, provided new opportunities for learning, and enhanced global business. The positive impacts of innovation are undeniable. Yet, This rapid evolution of technology presents its own challenges. While we all enjoy living in a world that is affirmatively better than the world of our ancestors, thanks to technological innovation, many of these same innovations have resulted in some negative consequences as well. We can no longer say for certain that our children will grow up in a world that is better than ours. We must ask ourselves, if the purpose of innovation is to enhance our world, why does doubt cloud our vision for the future? Why does it seem that we are not so certain that the current trajectory of innovation will result in a better world for children around the globe? Research reflects this uncertainty. A Pew Research study found that a majority of Americans believe that young people today have a much harder time than their parents' generation when it comes to saving for the future, paying for college, and buying a home. In another survey, at least 3/4 of adults in Japan, France, Italy, and Canada say their children will be worse off than their parents. So do majorities in Spain, the UK, Australia, Belgium, Greece, the Netherlands, and South Korea. It is indeed then something to reflect upon that despite the incredible anticipation of acceleration in innovation, that there are so many uncertainties about the benefits coming in the future. And the situation is exasperated as we reflect on the global South, where prosperity driven in large part by technological innovations have not been equally distributed across these nations. This is demonstrated by data from the IMF that shows that the GDP per capita for many countries in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East, as a share of the GDP per capita average of the G7 countries, has actually shrunk during the last 40 years. The last 40 years when we had this major innovation cycle. So as we look forward to a future where new technologies will be introduced at a pace unparalleled in human history, these disparities are a clarion call for a change of thinking, a call towards more responsible stewardship of innovation. With this challenge in mind, I invite you all today, in this Innovation Day, as you sit in the panels and the breakthrough sessions, as you have your discussions, your one-to-one discussions, as you network, to ponder the following questions with me. Number one, can we pioneer a global initiative that ensures that all nations, especially those in the global South, not only have access to cutting-edge technologies, but are also pivotal in shaping the innovation agenda, thereby democratizing the benefits of technological advancements? Number two, how can we enforce ethical standards in the deployment of new technologies to ensure that they serve as tools for social justice, enhancing community well-being and safeguarding human rights rather than exacerbating existing disparities? Can we commit to developing and implementing technologies that specifically aim to reduce economic disparities, ensuring that innovations in sectors like healthcare, education, and finance are accessible and beneficial to underserved populations within every nation? How can we create robust partnerships between governments, private sectors, and civil society to build a sustainable innovation ecosystem that prioritizes long-term societal gains as opposed to short-term economic benefits, particularly in regions vulnerable to exploitation? In what ways can we reform the intellectual property rights system to encourage sharing and collaboration on technological developments, ensuring that innovations crucial for public welfare, like medicines and green technologies, are not hindered by restrictive patents and high costs? At Qatar Research, Development and Innovation, we believe in responsible innovations, where scientists, technologists, and innovators proactively consider the broader impact of their work on society and the environment, and think about how their innovations will be used who could be affected, and what potential consequences might arise. The Prime Minister, His Excellency, in his opening address, cited the third Qatar National Development Strategy, which anchors the next few years on unleashing the potential of a human capital-driven economy that leverages R&D, technology, innovation, AI, with targets, aggressive targets that include doubling the gross R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP to 1.6%, ensuring that the majority of this R&D is driven by an innovative private sector, and for Qatar to rank in the top 30 in the Global Innovation Index. And while delivering to these targets, we must and we will strive to focus our national innovation activities on science and technology which produce responsible innovations that will benefit all of humanity, particularly in those places and communities that have not received their fair share of the economic fruits of past innovations or have suffered the negative consequences of those innovations. As we embark on our journey, we invite like-minded partners, government agencies, businesses, and entrepreneurs to join us. Let us work together to ensure the continuity of a trend that has been ongoing since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, to strive to lead the world in a better shape than when we found it. Let's ensure that our children and grandchildren don't look back at us as the ancestors who spoiled their world by blindly investing precious time and resources in building technologies and innovation which unintentionally endangered our species and our Earth. Let's learn from our past and focus on efforts on building innovations that will make our future world safer, greener, healthier, and more equitable for all of us. Please enjoy the rest of the sessions today and keep responsible innovation in mind as you engage in your various panels and sessions. Thank you very much.
Humanity's biggest business breakthrough story is unfolding in front of us.
2, 1.
Fueled by more than $250 billion of investment, for the first time in history, the private sector is leading the space race in a global revolution, spanning rocketry, satellites, and deep space exploration.
I want to thank you, sweetheart, because you made it possible for me.
The cost of sending people and cargo to orbit has started to come down. The boom in launches, coupled with the advent of more efficient satellites, is spurring demand. And investment is begetting more investment. Along the way, there will be commercial flops, broken promises, and lost capital. Bloomberg will cover the giant leaps and setbacks of this new business of space across investment, technology, policy, commerce, and exploration. The stars have aligned. Investors are watching closely, and we are too. Join us on the journey to Bloomberg Space.
Please welcome to the stage Ahunna Eziakonwa, Assistant Secretary General and Director of the Bureau for Africa, United Nations Development Program, Fred Swaniker, founder of Sand Technologies, and Alina Trujina, CEO and Managing Partner of the Radical Fund, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Haslinda Amin.
Innovation hubs are about people and connections. It's about getting R&D institutions, venture capital, startups all under one roof. Sounds easy enough. The question is, how do you do it? Fred, let's get you started. What does it take?
What does it take? So in my experience, I think there's three things that need to come together for an innovation hub to take place. The first and most important is the culture. A culture that allows people to dream, to imagine, and one that allows people to recover from failure, right? And where there's continuous learning, and everything. Because without that, you cannot expand into new frontiers and innovate, right? So the most important thing to get right, and I think this is something that is hard to measure, it's intangible, but it's the culture. That's where I think it really starts from. The second thing that I believe needs to come together is an ecosystem approach. Because innovation hubs ultimately need to bring several things together, and just one or two of them alone will not work. So you have to bring in the right regulations, the government support, the funding, the technology, the infrastructure, and of course, most importantly, the talent. Talent, in my experience, is the most critical part of that ecosystem, but it needs to be part of an overall thing. And there needs to be a concentration of all of those things in a certain area for them to feed off each other and for the innovation to take place. And so for example, that's why we have invested a lot in the African Leadership Group in building talent. Today we're training about 250,000 software engineers and data scientists across Africa. But we are focusing it in 8 hubs where we're trying to build up a lot of these, the other aspects of the ecosystem. And the third thing is relevance. It has to be relevant to the context of that region, right? You can't just copy and paste from Silicon Valley and bring it to Qatar or to Africa or Southeast Asia. It needs to be relevant to that unique, comparative advantages of that, of where you are, and the features of your talent pool and the other assets that you have, right? So looking inward and understanding what makes you special and using that as the basis for your own innovation ecosystem.
Alina, you work with startups in Africa as well as Southeast Asia. We talk about the ecosystems, well and good, but we also want it to be more equitable. So how are you looking at it?
I very much agree with Fred. I think it does start with culture change and leadership and delivering different types of capital. I mean, we talk about capital as if it's just financial capital, but it's also human capital. It's also getting to understand that you need different types of technical experience and expertise in each one of these innovation hubs. That doesn't just come out of thin air. So how do we teach our girls and boys at a very young age that you can become an entrepreneur, you can become an engineer, and how do you start that? And it's not going to happen overnight, but you can certainly build a generation of new technical experts and new entrepreneurs and founders. Because the world is no longer necessarily just a corporate world. We live in a world where innovation is a new type of a career. And I think teaching, again, girls and boys at a young age and instilling that risk-taking understanding of what it takes, but also the possibilities of innovation, is where it starts with being more inclusive, more equitable as a society.
And Ahunna, when you talk about innovation, as well as development finance, you hardly think about the UNDP. But you started an Africa finance hub. Why? What do you hope to achieve with it?
Why, thanks. Well, first of all, we're in the business of people and planet, right? And the big why is what we're focused on. What's the mission, really, for innovation? I think we do want to end poverty. We want to create more opportunities for people to improve their lives, but we want to do so in a sustainable way. And so you need innovation, you need capital. We have operated in a space of thinking that development aid per se is going to do it, but we now see that there are deep challenges that need a lot of investment in terms of financial resources, and that's why UNDP is really getting into this space of finding cheaper money for countries, because the fiscal space right now for many countries is very tight, particularly in the developing world. And you just need to have a variety of ways to get resources that are affordable, innovative financing. We're looking at the SDGs. So we need to align financing also to achieving the SDGs. For us, innovation really is critical, is at the heart of trying to get there faster, deeper, and better. So it's critical if we're going to achieve the sustainable development.
How is that vision shaping conversations you're having with donor countries, for instance?
Well, I think many donor countries are also starting to see the relevance of innovation, and they're starting to invest in this space. Let me talk about Africa a little bit. A very young continent in terms of the population, very savvy in terms of their use of technology. The talent, which Fred is growing across the continent and across the world, is in abundance, but opportunity is not there. So a lot of donor organizations that we speak to, I think the conversation is around how do we crowd in financing and opportunity to match with the talent that we're seeing, which is actually quite incredible. And that's why UNDP is really focusing on this initiative we call Timbuktu. Fred talked about culture. We think heritage. Young people understanding that they actually have a rich heritage as well, and innovation isn't a thing of the future, it has roots in the past. So Timbuktu, a place in Mali, birthplace of commerce, of knowledge, of a lot of innovation, we go from there to Africa's future. So the concept really is to be rooted in your values and your culture and reimagine the future, carrying that with you. But we take investment seriously in terms of going bold, going big, not the drip, drip, drip that we see often in the way we do development projects. So that's, the mission and the vision is to go big, to go better, and to use technology as much as we can.
And Fred, you talk about culture. It is really about disrupting education to get there, to get the mentality. How are you doing it?
Well, I think it requires changing the mindset of people, right? So starting young and creating an environment where people actually question. And so, especially in the age of AI, I believe that knowing how to ask the right questions is more important than having the right answers, because the answers are at your fingertips. But really, and getting people to think about the questions. How do you look at something that exists and ask why? And think about how can it be done better, right? So it requires a whole new form of education where you actually shift the learning from the teacher as the knowledge holder to the student, where they can teach themselves, they can learn from each other, a lot of peer-to-peer learning, playing and experimentation, putting that into the education, allowing people to start ventures when they are in high school and in university, and infusing education, entrepreneurship into education, right? So, and then ultimately creating opportunities for people to try things, to imagine, to try things, fail at those things, and not be punished for that, but to actually be encouraged to keep trying and doing more and more things, because through those experiments and those things that don't work is how they'll learn, and seeing everything as a learning opportunity, not as a failure. So one of the things I tell my staff is, there's nothing like failure. There's only learning opportunities. Learning opportunities that go according to plan or that don't go according to plan, but everything is a learning opportunity, right? So at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is change the mindset of people. And without that, you cannot have innovation.
Alina, you're the one with the capital. Radical fund, just how radical is it?
I think it very much builds on what we're talking about here, which is this mindset shift. And
where are you deploying your capital?
So the Radical Fund is a climate-focused fund in Southeast Asia. And we really think that the radical piece is that we need to radically shift the way we think about climate. And by that, we mean that it's not just the moral responsibility for all of us to care about climate change and address climate change, but there's also an economic benefit towards investing in innovation and technologies, and again, the entrepreneurs that are delivering that innovation. And there's now ample amount of data that suggests that there's what is called the triple dividends, whereby you actually reduce costs, You yield incredible value and increase societal benefits by investing in climate sustainability. So we're radically looking at this problem statement and saying, how do we invest into decarbonization and adaptation? Because we know with emerging markets like Southeast Asia region, like Africa, the continent, people are already facing the disasters, and we need to be able to adapt, not just prevent climate change. So we're investing in adaptation and decarbonization. We're investing in early stage. I think that's the other thing that's very important for an innovation ecosystem to flourish. You cannot just invest in growth stage, private equity, infrastructure, large, de-risked projects. You have to build the innovation ecosystem by building that pipeline and by changing and encouraging more entrepreneurs to start their business and not to go into the corporate world, for example. So investing in early stage. And the last but not least, we're investing in Southeast Asia as the Radical Fund. So unlike perhaps others who invest in the US and Europe and the UK, because again, those ecosystems are perceived to be more mature, which in many cases they are, but we believe in building the ecosystem locally and regionally. And so Southeast Asia is our home, and that's when we're developing those innovations and investing in those companies.
We talk about innovation hubs. Africa, 54 countries, Southeast Asia, 10 countries. When you talk about startups, should and are startups from different regions working together to better amplify the impact? Fred?
Yes, we're seeing a lot of that. I mean, for example, Web Summit that was held here in February, March, brought together entrepreneurs from all across, this region. But we brought 100 startups from Africa to come to Qatar, and there was really wonderful exchange of ideas, right? Because what you see is that many parts of the global south, as you call it, face similar challenges with urbanization, with healthcare, infrastructure, and so forth. So ideas that are emerging in different parts, you can cross-pollinate, and there can be a lot of collaborations. We are seeing, for example, I have a company called Sand Technologies, and we build industrial AI solutions for governments and companies around the world. We have talent in Africa, but we're working in Indonesia, helping one of the largest telco in Indonesia, Telkomsel, to figure out where they should roll out their towers and to help them build a smart city there. We're working in India with Reliance Jio, helping them figure out where they should put their towers, using African talent and the innovations that have come out of Africa. Right? The AI algorithms that our talent are building are solving problems in those countries. So there's wonderful opportunity for cross collaboration. I think that and Qatar can play a really important role to convene the talent that is coming from different parts of the world to engage, collaborate, and then ultimately to build great things that can change the world.
And for UNDP, what is the end goal? What are you looking to achieve?
Well, we need to end poverty in the world and inequality. I mean, there's enough wealth to go around.
And the challenges you're facing right now is?
Well, financing is really limited. So I think it's about addressing inequality, making sure that all the sectors that affect human life, we talk about human development, are getting the investments that are needed. So in our Timbuktu initiative, we're looking at 10 different sectors. So it's not just fintech and the things that investors are falling in love with because maybe it's a little bit easier. We're drawing investments into agriculture, for instance, which is really key for livelihoods on the continent of Africa. We're looking at edutech. We have so many kids out of school today. How do we bring innovation and technology to square that off so that we are giving learning opportunities to kids? We're looking at creatives. This is another sort of really exciting sector on the African continent, whether you're talking about films or you're talking about music or fashion. How do we, again, boost that ecosystem? And I really agree with Elena on the early stage, and that's what Timbuktu is focused on. We need to address that gap in early stage capital. So spreading the sectors, expanding that, but also having this kind of Pan-African DNA to startups. So what we're creating are centers of excellence in each country. Ghana will host agri-tech, for instance. Zambia will host mine tech. South Africa will host creatives. And these will be centers that serve the rest of the continent and the rest of the world. And I think that collaboration that Fred talked about is really key, that we're building platforms where you collaborate across countries, but also across regions. So I think that the model that we have in Timbuktu is really serving a number of purposes. One, we're drawing attention to the young population who have a lot of strength and a lot of talent. Secondly, we're bringing commercial capital and catalytic capital in the same room. This is very rare. And that's where the magic will happen. And then thirdly, we're making sure that the sectors where investment is coming into, it's expanded beyond one or two areas. That's, for us, the end goal then is to make sure that everyone everywhere has the opportunity to realize their full potential.
Fred talked about how we can't rely on the Silicon Valley model because you can't cut and paste. But is there a model, an example out there, Alina, that we can tap?
I think it's very specific to each market. And by market, I mean every country. Let's look at
an innovation hub like Singapore, for instance. Is there anything you can learn?
Absolutely. And bear in mind, Singapore is just 5 million people, whereas places like Nigeria or places like Indonesia is 280 million people.
So how do you adapt?
I think we need to learn what are the biggest challenges and opportunities in every market. Now, taking the example of Singapore, for instance, they've made very intentional commitments towards developing R&D hubs and making Singapore the home of deep tech and innovation. They've attracted talent, as Fred talked about, as one of the critical elements in driving the ecosystem forward. They have attracted capital. Regulatory-wise, they've made it easier for investors to come in and set up funds in order to invest in the region from Singapore. So they've really made strides to make sure that they've got the talent, the resources, and the regulatory ecosystem. Again, that's not happening overnight. That takes time to develop. So we can certainly learn from that. Other governments, other markets can learn from, what types of dynamic capital is needed. Blended finance mechanisms, bringing catalytic capital and blending philanthropic or concessionary capital with the private sector, mobilizing private sector capital in order to, deliver sort of the returns from both an impact perspective as well as economic and commercial perspective. So we can look at that, but in terms of the actual business models, in terms of the innovations, I think it has to be absolutely very specific because, let's say, vertical farming in Singapore might be an incredible innovation that leads to a scaled solution that addresses the challenges of Singaporeans. Vertical farming in Indonesia is not needed, and there's other agri-tech and aquaculture examples of things that will scale, because at the end of the day, we do want scaled solutions with mass adoption that basically benefits millions of people and not just a few of them.
Right?
Yeah, if I can just build on what Alina is saying, the importance of understanding the challenges and opportunities of a region is very, very critical because that's where innovation comes from. You've got to be frustrated about something that you see in your society. You've got to be inspired by the opportunity to solve it. So, and this goes all the way back into the education system, right? How do you shift people from just learning about what, but really understanding why, and why they should care about a certain issue? So, for example, when we built the African Leadership University, most universities give you a menu of academic disciplines, history, and mathematics, engineering, physics, and so forth. And you choose an academic major. What we did is we said, let's give you a menu of the grand challenges facing Africa and facing the world: healthcare, climate change, education, infrastructure, the empowerment of women, and also a list of opportunities. Where are you uniquely positioned, right? The creative industry, tourism, agriculture. And then they choose not an academic major, but they choose a mission. Pick one of these problems that you're passionate about understand it deeply, and then curate your learning experience around that. So you create someone who then is driven to be a problem solver, right? They're not just someone who is thinking about academic theory, but they want to solve that problem. And it's something that has deep meaning to them because they live in it. It affects their family, it affects their country. So without that passion, you won't have the energy and the inspiration to actually drive innovation.
We talk about scaling, Ahunna. Given what you're doing right now, how do you scale?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you need to have this big vision that it's important to scale, and that's why I think startups are key. That's where you see the difference between startups and, say, small, medium enterprises. It's not just about creating livelihood opportunities. It's about changing the world, in a way. You know, you have an idea that could change the world, and if you invest in it, you scale. So we've come up with this idea of a $1 billion fund to boost the startup ecosystem on the continent of Africa. And here, as I said, it would be catalytic financing and commercial financing. There you're talking about being serious about going to scale. And when we talk about scale, we talk about the possibility of creating more jobs on the continent. Jobs, really big issue on the continent, but also the opportunity to take ideas that are born in Africa, beyond Africa. We have now the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So you're talking about a 1.3 billion people market. Bringing that on board in this space of innovation is going to create scale. So if you're a creative in Zimbabwe, you can dream beyond Zimbabwe. You know, it's going to be facilitated for you to go to Nigeria and join Nollywood and, you know, spread your talent there. So we have actually a lot of opportunities in Africa for scale if we think big enough and stop sort of operating just in the small spaces. The small spaces are still important, but I think it's really key that development financing thinks beyond projects. And today, UNDP is talking about portfolios. And we need a systems shift. So not just, the pockets that we're all in, we really need to think broadly and in a systems way. And I think that's what Timbuktu could do for us, because it's talking about partnerships with governments, partnerships with the academia. By the way, universities have been largely left out of this equation, especially in Africa. And so we're bringing university innovation centers. We've built about 13 of them right now in 13 countries. By the end of the year, we'll have 17. The R&D part needs to be plugged into the industry. So industry, government, business coming together will definitely lead to impact and to scale.
Just one follow-up question, just to wrap up the conversation quickly. Call to action.
Invest in entrepreneurs at the earliest stage. And if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, start your business. There's no better time than starting a new startup today.
Fred?
Start by changing the culture and the mindset. You got to create an ecosystem that allows people to fail, dream, imagine, take risk. Without that, there's no innovation.
Ahunna?
Trust. Trust young people.
Ahunna, Fred, Alina, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I think investors are still uncertain about what's happening in the global economy, and we see opportunities to create long-term value for our clients, and that's ultimately what's going to drive the valuation of EQT.
Please welcome to the stage Christian Singding, CEO and Managing Partner of EQT Partners, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Eric Schatzker.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. Christian, I'm delighted to welcome you for the first time to the Qatar Economic Forum.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We're going to cover a lot of ground. I'd like to begin, Christian, by talking about investing in technology. It's one of the things that we're here to do. Everybody wants to know about artificial intelligence, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Mistral, a French company involved in AI, recently raised money at a $6 billion valuation. OpenAI has tripled to $80 billion in 10 months. NVIDIA has a market cap of $2.3 trillion, and Microsoft, which is spreading its bets everywhere in AI, is at $3.1 trillion. Christian, is there any value left in AI?
This is a great question. I think the big speculation these days is, for the companies that are doing AI, like OpenAI, how do you value those companies? There's so much future potential, but we don't yet know what the future will look like. So that is extremely complicated, actually. But I feel that this is history repeating itself a bit. If you think back to when Google was a tiny company, and it went public at a wild valuation, everybody thought, it felt like the same. Who would have known that was a multi-trillion-dollar company today? So if I look away from the valuation question, I think there's no doubt that AI is changing the world of business, the society in many ways, and that there are lots of other angles into investing into the AI space without having to deal with that particular question.
So let's talk about that. How do you play AI without playing AI?
Yeah. So across EQT, we have venture capital and private equity, infrastructure, et cetera. And we do, on the ventures and growth side, we're investing in called the tools and the shovels. Software that's serving AI, hardware that's serving AI, companies that are using apps that are using AI, and all kinds of different features around that network. And in infrastructure, we're going a totally different path. Of course, there we're part of digitizing society. So there it's fiber broadband, it's data centers, towers, et cetera, because the need for data is massively increasing. So there are a lot of other areas of investment that support this whole AI wave that's out there.
What people want to know, though, is there potential in those areas for genuinely handsome returns? Because when people think about AI and whether to commit capital to AI, they worry, not without reason, that all the value is going to accrue to the LLM developers, right? The OpenAIs, for example. Or the real arms merchants, the NVIDIAs.
Yeah, you can argue that, and I think Google itself is concerned, right? Because if you use ChatGPT, you probably do, we do, I do all the time. That means I'm not using the search mechanism any longer. And that powers a huge part of their income, right? The whole advertising model, the interactivity, the cookies, all these kinds of things. So their business models are changing. So I think there's certainly shifts in business that are going to be impacted by this across many different types of companies and value chains. But if you look in the long term, you think the next generation now is introducing voice, video, interactivity at a scale which we've never seen before. Maybe the change that's coming is about the same as when we got the iPhone first. And of course, all the applications that are needed to handle that. And even we also invested another angle into this, which is tech services. So primarily Indian companies that are helping companies move into the cloud or move into AI, because almost every industry is impacted by AI. Very few people have the competence. So if we own the companies that have that competence to help them, there you go.
The reality, of course, is that EQT is a $250 billion firm, and you invest not just in AI, but in technology and other areas. Let's talk about technology as distinct from AI. How do you think about it, and where are you looking for opportunities?
Yes. So if you look away from AI, we're investing in a number of different areas across the firm. We're trying to find long-term secular themes in society. One of them is the digitalization of society. The other one is, let's call it sustainability, moving to new energies, for example, as fossil fuels over time run out, and the aging society. So there are a number of themes that we invest, demographics. So, and that goes into the healthcare space. That's a big part of our business. The other big part of our business is technology, and there we invest in software companies across all value chains. Really, we invest in technology companies that are serving some of those sectors that I just mentioned, serving these the green space. Agri-tech is a big area, and then we have industrial technology companies, so robotics, automation. Humanoid robotics is a very exciting space. We own a company called 1X, which is one of the possible winners in the humanoid robots race. Time will tell. It's very early. So if you think about technology, it's an enormous space, actually. And what we try to do is try to find the mega trends, break that down into trends that we can invest behind, and invest from different angles into those trends.
Could you be a futurist for a moment and share with us what you think a humanoid robot is going to be doing for us 10 years from now?
I think you'll come into the Bloomberg office, and the humanoid robot will receive you in the reception, help you find your meeting rooms, serve you coffee, clean the offices when everybody's leaving, security, handling security, that kind of stuff. But also, if you break it down into another part of the world, like warehouses, for example, the robots can, of course, work 24/7. They don't get back pain or neck pain. They're strong, stable. And these are actually use cases that are already happening. All the things I just mentioned, you can watch some videos of our company, for example, or some other ones where all those things are happening. Not yet perfectly, though.
For EQT, which, as you've explained, operates as a VC investor, a growth equity investor, a private equity investor, where's the optimal place to participate in technology? Because in VC, 9 out of 10 companies fail.
Yeah.
In growth, you have to find the right time to enter. And of course, in private equity, these days, it's less about financial engineering and more about creating value and optimizing business models. What's the optimal spot?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? Sometimes I'm asked slightly differently, what's my favorite asset class amongst all of our asset classes? And I end up actually saying, even though I grew up in private equity, I end up saying infrastructure. Because if you think about the transformation that society is going through now on the digital side and electrifying the world, basically, not just the transportation sector, not just the energy sector, but over time also the manufacturing sector, and the investments that are needed in both of those spaces, or all those spaces, is massive. And you're providing essential services to society, and then we add the venture capital, private equity mindset to it, so we can expand those companies, create better services, et cetera, and better companies. So that's probably what I'm most intrigued about right now.
Europe is EQT's backyard. You live in Zurich, in fact. Tell us, is what's going on in European technology, competitive with what's going on in American tech?
No. It's not competitive with American tech, and that is something which is a challenge, a big challenge. If you look at there are no trillion-dollar companies in Europe, particularly not in tech. We're quite good at life sciences, pharma. Novo Nordisk, for example, is a fantastic company in Denmark, right around the corner from us. But in technology, it's an issue, and I think that there are multiple levels of problems. It's access to capital, it's different regulatory regimes across countries, it's possibility for exits, and it's like, the Silicon Valley, of course, is the ultimate example. Like there's a value chain there from the early startup angel investors all the way to the public markets. And you know, in the universities, and everybody's working to get that company up. And since Europe's so fragmented, you don't have anywhere where that's really successful. Sweden's pretty good at it, actually, where our company is from, but it's a fraction of Silicon Valley.
Does Europe recognize that it has this problem?
Yes. We're part of a big delegation in the EU that was led, actually kickstarted by President Macron in France, to help attack some of these areas. So mobility of labor, mobility of capital, creating, rather than every country having a stock exchange, shouldn't we have a European stock exchange?
A federated stock exchange.
Like a big one. I mean, we're traded on the NASDAQ, but that's NASDAQ Stockholm. Why isn't that connected to the rest of Europe, you know? So, so all these elements, and actually when we were doing that study, which was 2 years ago or something, the majority of capital into growth companies was coming from America, and the majority of exits above a certain level were in America. So if you don't have the capital, you don't have the exits, of course you're losing a lot of the value creation. That's not good.
What about regulation? The European Union, as many of you probably know, has GDPR, it has the Digital Markets Act, it has the AI Act, it has many other pieces of legislation. Is Europe over-regulating tech? Is that partly to explain for this lack of competitiveness?
It may be, although there's a lot of regulation in America as well, as you know, and there are tariffs being implemented and all kinds of trade barriers and stuff. So I think this is a global trend, unfortunately. But the fact that Europe is so fragmented, that I just talked about, and you put regulation on top of it, of course, that makes it harder. I think if you compare the Green Deal versus the Inflation Reduction Act, really interesting. So we did that, actually, a few months ago. And they're not that dissimilar in size, but the IRA is much more effective because it actually provides cash, it deregulates, and it's quick. And Europe has the problem that they have the same ideas, but you get credits instead of cash, it takes longer, and regulation is harder to, let's say, harder to weave through. So there is an issue there, yes.
Christian, I suspect there may be some of your LPs in this room right now, and they recognize that private equity has a bit of a problem. It is difficult to exit investments and return capital to your limited partners. How are you solving for that problem?
Thank you. We have actually more than 10 years ago, we started shifting our mindset in private equity and how we manage our funds to make sure that what happens in a typical private equity fund is they end up at the end of the life with relatively few companies that are underperforming and are hard to exit. And then
you got out of all your good ones early.
So it's the opposite of financial theory. You sell the winners and you keep the dogs. So we switched that around, which our industry has been slow to do, but we did it. So we run with the winners and try to sell the dogs, rather, if I may use that expression. And that means that we were lucky coming into this cycle that we've sold a lot of companies. But what we're doing now is trying to innovate. So first of all, we built a team around exit so we can be the best at providing the markets with healthy and good IPOs. We just took Galderma public in Switzerland. That went very well. So that we can actually really make sure we understand which companies should go to the stock exchange. How do we do that in the best possible way? How do we create long-term success? And of course, all the different private avenues to families, to industrial groups, to financial groups, et cetera. And then we're also trying to innovate with something we call private IPOs, which is kind of, if you think about it, pretty simple. If a company here is going public, you make a market in the shares, it starts to trade. We could just keep it in our ecosystem, create a market in the shares, and continue to run with it. So this is something we're trying to do this year, together with some of our big clients, and hopefully that'll create yet another alternative to create liquidity, because there's a lot of capital. There's $10 trillion in private markets. We have more than 1,200 institutional clients at EQT. In a typical IPO, there's only 150 or 200. So why couldn't we do that?
When I read about that for the first time, I thought, what a clever alternative to the continuation fund.
I agree.
One of your companies, Waystar, which simplifies healthcare payments, is trying to raise $1 billion in a US IPO. How important a test for the IPO market in America will that be?
I think it is going to be important. There haven't been that many IPOs yet, maybe 10 or 20 or something like that. Luckily, I think they've performed reasonably well, with the exception of a couple. And this is a sizable company, you know,
pardon me,
$5, $6, $7 billion, whatever it's the valuation ends up being. So it's sizable. It's in a really interesting sector, and a $1 billion IPO in the U.S. is pretty big, actually. So I think it will be important, and you know, ref my other comment that we're trying to be really, really good at this and think very long term, because when we take a company public, we're typically owners of that company 3 more years. So we're doing our best to make sure that that goes well.
Sovereign wealth funds in this part of the world, the QIA included, of course, have become very important partners for firms like yours. I had the opportunity to speak to Mohammed Al-Sawadi, who is QIA's CIO for the Americas yesterday, and he was talking with some sense of satisfaction about how much leverage investors like QIA have over their GPs these days. Is that something you feel acutely?
That's a good way to ask the question. I'd rather say that it's pretty impressive what this region has been able to create in terms of capital base, you know, growing populations, growing economies, and a real willingness to invest in innovation in the future, whether it's infrastructure locally or whether it's global companies, et cetera. So we're lucky to have partners all over the region, and we try to work with them in funds and direct investments and create a partnership spirit, I think is the way I would say.
EQT has taken some pains to distinguish itself from the rest of the private equity industry. How will you distinguish yourself further in the future?
It's a good question. Again, the way I would answer it is that we like to go our own way. So if you look at EQT today, all of our strategies connect with active ownership. We own shares in the company, or we own the building. We own typically co-controlling or co-controlling stakes. So when you have EQT as a shareholder, there's something happening. We're helping drive transformation, driving that company to the future, driving change. Sometimes things are tough. We need to fix those problems together. We don't have any passive financial products. So we don't have any insurance products. We don't have any credit products, those kinds of things. And because that's a totally different mindset. That's an allocation mindset. It's an AUM game. And some of our peers are playing that game. That's not for us. You know, we're here to create the most value that we can in a responsible way. And we're in the performance game, you know, rather than the AUM game.
One of the ways in which you've distinguished yourself is by being a willing buyer of businesses that help you enter new markets or perhaps new products. In 2022, EQT made the then largest ever purchase of a private equity firm, if I'm not mistaken, BPEA in Hong Kong, for north of $7 billion. Since then, of course, BlackRock has bought GIP, an infrastructure company, for $15 billion, so that's bigger. But I'm curious to know, and I think people here might want to know, do acquisitions remain an important part of your strategy, and how healthy is your appetite?
Yeah, it will. I mean, you look at the whole industry, there are something like 7,500 PE firms in the world. And there is a consolidation ongoing, driven by some of the forces we've talked about, and also driven by the need for, you need a lot of competence around AI, digitalization, sustainability, reporting, compliance, regulation, you name it.
You get that from scale.
You get it from scale. And if you're small, that's going to take way too much time. Rather, join a big platform. We already took care of it, and then you can just continue investing. So the consolidation is going to continue big time, and some will be outcompeted. I think this next cycle is going to be pretty tough. The tide was rising all boats from 2010 to 21. Now it's back to fundamental value creation. So we think we will be one of the consolidators, yes. I don't see that many deals of the size that of BPA and GIP. There aren't that many firms of that scale. But I think, you know, regional or niche players in certain areas, specialists, certainly will join forces with us and will continue to grow.
Ladies and gentlemen, Christian Sinding.
Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Mohammed bin Ali bin Mohammed Al Manai, Minister of Communications and Information Technology of the State of Qatar, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Jumana Bersachi.
I think it was in November 2022 when ChatGPT was unveiled to the world. And ever since that moment, there has been so much excitement about artificial intelligence, but in this case, LLMs. And that was the big buzzword for 2023. Here we are, 2024. And there's something I picked up on from the opening speech of His Excellency, the Prime Minister, and he mentioned, it was brief, but it was interesting, that Qatar are launching your own Arabic version of an LLM called Fanar, which, by the way, means lighthouse, which is a nice name. Seems like a big announcement to me. Tell us more about what Fanar is looking to achieve and how long it's been in the works for.
Thanks, Jumana, for hosting me today. I think Fanar, maybe I should give or shed a light on the story of Fanar, because the foundation of Fanar actually is based from our research and development community here in Qatar. And it gives us hope that the more that we invest in research and development, the more results that we could see. So the idea of Fanar started from a research institute here in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Qatar Computer Research Institute, which we are lucky as a digital community to have such institute here in Qatar. So they started by doing some research about the foundational model and the large language model, and then they develop it step by step till they have reached the status where actually they have a very solid foundational model that the government actually decided to invest on more by providing additional capability on infrastructure and providing more access to data. So we are committed actually to support research in the country, and we are happy to see that the research and development effort here in Qatar actually has led us to this step. And I would invite everyone maybe later on to go and visit QCRI. It hosts, I would consider among the best scientists in the world actually in the AI domain, led by Dr. Ahmed Al-Mgarmed, who is the godfather of AI here in Qatar.
Let me ask you why you think it's important that there are Arabic versions of LLMs.
Every language will have to have its own LLM, and to a certain extent, at a certain stage, we would have to reach a status where we will have multilingual model. Currently, language-specific models is usually biased to that language or that culture or the data that those models are being trained on.
The results will differ.
The results for sure would differ, but with a more quantity and quality of data, the results will be, or the biased view would actually be limited. But we need to start something. I think in our region there are multiple initiatives to develop Arabic LLM, and one of them actually that we hope it will dominate at a certain stage is Fanar.
Yeah. Some people say that there's an AI arms race going on around the world. You've got all of these economic superpowers investing in AI, partnering up, looking at new technologies. What role does the Middle East play?
We would have to look into the capability of each region or each country. I think maybe in US or China, they have much more capability when it comes to semiconductor, for example, manufacturing, to technological development, to resources and research, robust research scientists, unlike our region, for example, where we don't have semiconductor industry that we can build on. So the capability differ, but the capability that I would see the Middle East region can excel in, and being able to operate infrastructure that can support the world need for compute capacity, which is a big problem now. And the race now is to be able to have compute capacity available with pressure on the supply chain globally on that domain. And also on the foundational model, I think we would be able to contribute, and later on the use cases or application. We have some interesting actually development also on the use case and applications in our region. Maybe not everyone at the same speed, but I would see, always the trio that we complement each other on that. With Saudi Arabia, they are doing a great job. UAE, they are doing a great job, and Qatar also is collaborating with them on that domain.
Yeah, you mentioned semiconductors. The region is not known as a semiconductor hub, but there are other pickaxes involved in artificial intelligence, and the two others that come up are data centers and human capital. You actually need humans to train these machines. But let me just ask you about the opportunity for data centers in the region as well. Yesterday, I was speaking to one of your colleagues, His Excellency, from the Real Estate Authority, and he was talking about how one part of Qatar's plan is to repurpose existing real estate data centers could be a focus. How does that tie in to what you're trying to do as well?
It's within the infrastructure ecosystem that would be required for AI, and Qatar has actually attracted many global players when it comes to data center and also the hyperscalers. We look forward to grow our capacity on data center capacity in Qatar three times more in the next 5 to 6 years, and also to attract more of the hyperscalers, more than what we have to operate from Qatar. And for sure, all the infrastructure that we try to build will not be operated by the government, but by our partners, whether in private sectors here in Qatar or globally. As you know, there are also limitations on access to technology in certain aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that 2023 was probably the year that artificial intelligence started dominating the airwaves. I've certainly had many interviews where I've asked about artificial intelligence, but Qatar actually put in a national AI strategy back in 2019 based on 6 pillars: education, data access, employment, business research, and ethics. How do you see AI impacting each one of those individual pillars?
If we take, for example, a human capital pillar, everyone globally see AI as a threat. We see it as an opportunity in Qatar, because at the end we have a limited human capital capacity, and in order to introduce efficiencies and increase the output actually of the current capacity, AI would be a major contributor. We see a very limited impact when it comes to sophisticated jobs, but maybe the impact is higher on clerical or administration jobs that comes in the future. I think one of the important pillars that we talked about in the strategy is data. As I always give an example of AI as the restaurant and data is the kitchen. No one would like to go and see the kitchen, and everyone would like to go and eat the food. But the real challenge actually is making sure that the amount of data available is with a certain quality and certain capacity that will enable everyone to innovate in the future of AI. And we have tackled that topic specifically, as we are a small country with a small amount of data, and we introduce a term there, we call it data diplomacy.
Data diplomacy.
Exactly, where we need actually to make sure that we group a number of countries where we can collaborate and share data with, so that we can make sure also that the small countries also will have access to the technology with a certain amount of data that can help them to develop AI applications in the future.
I mean, to continue on your kitchen analogy, the food you eat is only as good as its ingredients. So you've got to have good ingredients. You've got to have good data.
And maybe this is where Fanar would be excelling, because data cleaning, data quality is one of the high priority, or one of the things that our scientist actually is insisting to have good quality data so that the model can be good.
You mentioned the word collaboration. I know that there are other countries in the region also who have come out with their own Arabic versions of LLMs.
Yes.
How important is it that you collaborate amongst each other?
I think we should all collaborate as we sit on a limited amount of data, and at a certain stage we would have to open up together and make sure that those models are open source model where everyone can benefit from them. As in general, if we see the world today, the amount of data that's available in Arabic is very limited.
Yeah.
Maybe I can quote a number here. I think the Arabic data on internet maybe doesn't exceed 2 to 3%, which is again a challenge that would be a bigger challenge when AI comes.
Human capital, you said that it's not an issue in Qatar. What do you do to attract the right talent?
I think the pressure on talents is everywhere, but we started from seeing it from economic perspective. Where do we need the digital economy sector to be, and how much the amount of resources that would be required in order to reach the economic target that we have set for ourselves. So over the coming 7 to 8 years, we should be doubling ICT professionals in Qatar to increase the existing 20,000 to 46,000. So an average increase of almost 100%. We are, to a certain extent, well equipped, that we have great institutions actually that specialize on digital domain, and the amount of graduates that they come, even we face some challenges to retain them, a global challenge, but we are trying to make sure that the critical mass that's required to achieve that economic target is being met by the university outcome, and also by starting some attraction programs that the government has started already. Maybe I can mention a few. The recent introduction of the talent visa. It would be a great tool in order to make sure that the talent would live here comfortably.
Yeah.
And the second thing is Jusur company, which is another vehicle that talent can operate through. And as part of our Digital Agenda 2030, we will be launching a program by beginning of next year, specifically designed to attract digital talent to operate from Qatar.
Right. Oh, well, we spoke about, I guess, public collaboration within GCC. I'm interested to hear, I mean, there are numerous public-private partnerships in place already. To what extent do those public-private partnerships with multinational corporations help push this project forward?
For sure, it helped a lot. Specifically, we need access to technologies that we don't produce. We need access
like the
to
chips.
Exactly. We need access to knowledge that we don't have sometimes. So collaboration is going very well, and we see a very positive result in dealing with multinationals in that domain.
Doesn't matter if it's East or West.
It doesn't matter in terms of knowledge. It doesn't matter East or West.
You spoke about some of the use cases for the AI that you've been deploying, and I know you've also leaned on it heavily, also around the World Cup. There were a lot of use cases. So talk us through some of the policies that have been transformed as a product of AI.
Yeah, I think I always give a good example of a crowd management solution that we deployed during World Cup, and that's why many people would see the traffic during the World Cup has taken flow very easily, and we are all nowadays in Qatar enjoying the easy traffic, to the extent that we struggle when we travel outside Qatar. And it's all because of the use of technology and the use of technology that enable to forecast how we can manage traffic and how we can move crowd easily in the country. Maybe another interesting use cases that we are working with now is the multilingual AI used within the government. As you know, Qatar is a country that holds maybe more than 130 nationalities. So there are multi-languages that we need to make sure that our ecosystem is capable in handling and interacting with. And hopefully by the beginning of the new year, we'll be launching a multilingual use case that will deal with 5 to 6 languages within the government entity, so that we can interact with all the citizens and residents equally.
Well, we've talked about the language model, and we talked about FANAD. To round things up, let me just ask you, what comes next after the language models?
I think what comes next cannot be limited to anything for the time being, but what can make a real breakthrough in the near future is, I think, the compute capacity and how we deal with it. I think the world has exhausted the current compute technology capability in order to serve AI and to serve other complicated problems that exist in the world. I think a big leap will happen if quantum compute would be delivered ahead of time so that we can start delivering much more complex use cases to resolve much more complex problems.
Well, you were saying to me off record before, offline, I should say, that current use cases are very math-oriented, but in the future we're looking at more physics-oriented answers. So if you want to explain that to the audience.
So I think, you know, we are in a leap time now in technology when it comes. All the technologies that we have dealt with are basically yes or no, or 1 + 1 = 2. Now the technologies would move us actually to have a level of error that can be accepted and tolerated in the future.
Yeah.
And AI is for sure one of them, as many of the results that we reach through AI, sometimes we don't know how we have reached those results.
That's the 1-minute explanation of what AI does. Your Excellency, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Will Hamid, founder and CEO of Whoop, Raj Ganguly, co-founder and co-CEO of B Capital, and Julian Ma, CEO of Inceptio Technology, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Malika Kapoor.
Will, Raj, Julian, welcome. Thank you for being with us. Will, you provide technology that helps us enhance our performance and live a better life. Julian, you're providing technology for startup, your technology for self-driving trucks that's really revolutionizing the logistics business in China. And Raj, you provide the funds that help bring all these exciting technologies to us. Will, I want to start with you. Congratulations, very exciting news. Ronaldo has invested in your company just a few days ago, and he is now one of your ambassadors.
Thank you.
Now, the Whoop band, of course, you know, it measures our biometrics. It'll tell us when we should exercise, what kind of exercise we should do, how much time we should spend in recovery mode. So I totally understand why Ronaldo wears a Whoop band, why Michael Phelps wears it. Why should somebody like me wear it?
Well, believe it or not, most of the people who wear Whoop are not of the athleticism of Michael Phelps and Cristiano Ronaldo. Most of the people on Whoop are like you and me, who are trying to better understand their bodies. And, you know, you look around, we're all going to spend about a third or a quarter of our life sleeping, or at least trying to sleep. So first and foremost, Whoop does a phenomenal job measuring sleep and helping you understand that black box of your life. We have a big focus on recovery. We also have a lot of information now around stress, which I imagine affects some people in this room, some more than others. So there's a bunch of different ways, I think, to better understand your body and to have an eye towards performing at a higher level. We started with the world's best athletes, and now over time we work with a pretty general consumer who's approaching Whoop from a lot of different perspectives. I think at the end of the day, you can only really manage what you measure. So if you think your health is important, if you think your fitness is important, start by measuring it.
Yeah, sleep and stress, managing that could work for me. Julian, I want to come to you next. And you have said that your definition of practical AI is to create value for everybody. But first, I want to congratulate you. Your company has hit a record. You've just hit a record of 100 kilometers accident-free, right, for your trucks?
100 million kilometers of accident-free commercial mileage.
Congratulations, that's a huge amount. So that obviously means the roads are safer, which is a huge component of what you do. But how is your business creating value for everyone?
Thank you. What we do, we as a technology company, we were founded more than 5 years ago, and we focus on the autonomous driving technology for the trucks. When we started, we took at that time, we call this as a phased approach. So we see the autonomous, the actual application for the autonomous driving for the trucks can take 2 stages. First stage is still with a safety driver. We can call this a co-piloting. But then the second stage is the fully driverless. But for the fully driverless, we think that would be at least later than 2030. So from now until then, there are still a very large, sort of a long time frame and a very large market. So we focus on making this semi-autonomy technology as advanced as possible, and also make it a massive deployable and commercially deployable. So this 100 million kilometers of commercial mileage is a sort of a testimony for that. It first of all has a very broad industry participation. In China, more than 200 logistic companies, large and small, are using our technology-powered truck every day. It has been equipped into 7 models by 4 OEMs. So it has been a very broad-based participation. And then it creates value, a real value to the customers. Out of this 100 million kilometers, it is full commercialized deployment. It's not like testing. And on average, our customer can create in between 5 to 7% of the cost saving on a per mile basis. And actually that translates to in between 12 to 18 months of payback for that add-on cost for large express companies. And for the broad-based small and medium fleets, that payback period is between 12 to 24 months. So it's very healthy. And behind that philosophy is that we want to create value to the customer, much improved safety, much more comfortable and actually very different kind of driving experience for the truck. For example, daily, that is between 10 to 14 hours of driving. Now, the autonomous system can take up to 95% or even 99% of the work and leave only like on average 5% of the work to the driver. So you can imagine it's a transformation of the driving experience. So that, and also in addition to the fuel savings, so that creates real value to the customers.
That safety record is really impressive. Raj, I want to come to you next. And you've said that B Capital specializes in supporting companies that have the potential to transform industries. Now, I'm sure every founder says that their company is going to do that, and I'm sure Will and Julian have said that at some point as well. So how do you as an investor decide where to deploy your capital? Which company deserves your investment?
Great. Well, it's great to be back here at the forum. You know, in response to your question, I know there's a lot of investors and entrepreneurs here in the crowd. I think it really varies depending on the stage of the company. We invest all the way from ideas through companies that have product and companies that are commercializing and even companies that have scaled to hundreds of millions of dollars. And it does, the answer varies based on the stage. At the very early stage, it's really just driven by the team. When we're investing at the seed stage, we look for founders. If you've done it before, that's a positive, but I always say that some of the best companies in the world have been built by first-time founders, so you don't have to have done it before. But we spend a lot of time looking at, is it an industry that's ready to be transformed? Because there's a lot of industries where they're not actually ready to adopt new technology. So we want to make sure that the industry is at the right tipping point. If there's a product that's already built, we really want to understand how is the product differentiated. And if it's a company that's already commercializing and scaling, for us, the most important thing is repeat customer purchases, because as great as it is to get new customers, the best identifier of early success is how loyal are your existing customers.
Julian, I want to go back to what you said about the trucks and its semi-autonomous driving, and the technology takes care of about 95% of the driving. But you still need a human. Is there a future you see, and how far away it is, when it's fully autonomous? And that makes me think about Elon Musk. He was in China recently. Did you meet him? And he was there to discuss fully autonomous driving technology. What does his visit to China mean for your business?
We look at Elon's visit to China very, very positively. It was a very short trip, and he only met with, I think, government officials. We think, first of all, it give the Tesla's vehicle a clearance that it meets all of the data security requirements in China. So that is a very big boost for a Tesla, and I think it's also a very good progress and indication that artificial intelligence can truly work across the border. That is very significant for companies outside of China to deploy their technology commercially and scaling up in China. And also, I think it is a good foundation for a cross-border collaboration, which means that in the days of artificial intelligence, actually, people can truly work across the border, and also can effectively sharing and exchanging data across the border. For example, there is a GDPR that kind of protocol actually is different companies can work together, and the technology can benefit across different markets. And one company actually can benefit from the use cases and the data assets across different geography. That is actually very significant. We look at it in a very positive way.
Now, we can't talk about practical AI and not talk about the issue of privacy. And I, for one, I find that practical AI does make my life a lot easier, but I do find myself thinking about just how much information, personal information of mine is out there. If you look at the Whoop band, Whoop knows a lot about me or my son who wears it, sleeping habits and exercise habits. That's a lot of personal data. When should I worry about my privacy being invaded, and why should I not worry about that?
Well, I do think that consumers should be concerned about data and privacy. I think a lot of big tech companies have abused data and made you essentially the product.
Right.
And at Whoop, we've taken a pretty different approach where we've actually published a whole set of privacy principles. And you can find these on our website. And essentially, we outline why we believe the consumer should own the data. So if you're on Whoop, it's your data. Now, ultimately, that means that you can control what you do with the data. You can consent to have data shared with doctors or research providers and otherwise. But at Whoop, we do not make you, the end consumer, the product. We sell a subscription, and that's our product, and that's what we generate revenue from. So I think it's actually a very different approach to data privacy than nearly any other player in the space.
How do you build trust with a consumer? And how much time do you spend thinking about trust?
I mean, I think you build trust through consistency. It's hard, I think, for a technology company immediately to demonstrate trust because you have to, build a reputation. Mm-hmm. And so it's built through consistency. I think it also helps that we have very high-profile athletes who wear Whoop, and their data is very valuable. We have very high-profile world leaders who wear Whoop, and you can see the product just on their wrist in photos of them. So clearly, in order to have that type of member base on our technology, we must be doing something right from a data privacy standpoint. Otherwise, why would all these people be wearing it?
Did you find out Ronaldo wears a Whoop band just by seeing pictures of him wearing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little surreal, but often the way that we discover someone wears Whoop is by seeing a photo of them wearing it. And I think it's one of the cooler things about building a product that is targeting a high-performance individual is, high-performance individuals then in turn gravitate to wearing it. And so, everyone from the best athletes in the world to world leaders and executives and Fortune 500 CEOs, we see wearing the product.
That's great. Raj, I want to come back to funding. And in March, you closed another round of funding. You raised $750 million. And this time you had investments from existing companies and also new investors. As you were speaking to LPs, how much of a priority was AI for them?
I think it's a little bit a tale of two stories. I mean, AI is in every discussion, but it's also so prevalent that I don't think people are specifically talking about AI in the tech industry as much because everything involves AI. So for us, I think what we see is that there's been a downturn in venture capital funding. I think prices have come down over the last 3 years since the 2021 peak. And historically, if you look at it, some of the best years to invest in venture capital have been the years where there has been less capital. Our industry is a strange industry. When our industry is really hot and everyone's talking about venture and everyone's talking about tech, those are normally the highest price years, which end up being some of the worst investment years. And when we're on the third day of conferences and VC and innovation is being less talked about, then it's some of the best times to invest. And so we are really excited to keep backing some of the best entrepreneurs in our portfolio. We think that there's also some great new investments we'll make out of this opportunistic pool of capital in later stage companies. And growth has really had a tough go over the last 3 years. I think companies that are, that have scaled to 50, 100 million revenues that are 2 to 3 years away from IPO have struggled to raise that one last additional private round before they can IPO. We all hope that the IPO window is slowly reopening, and in the back half of this year, we'll see some more IPOs. I think 2025, we will definitely see more IPOs. But that still implies that it's been kind of a 3-year gap, and so we're excited to keep funding and doing those last private rounds before companies go out and go public.
We've been talking a lot about that, about hoping that the IPO market picks up. Julian, I want to come to you about something that's quite topical, and the US-China trade wars. How concerned are you about that, and do you think that might impact your business?
Unfortunately, this is a challenging sort of topic. Yes, that means, at least for the time being, we do not choose to just provide the product in US market. Although I do believe that the technology is capable of replicating the same kind of customer value and commercial success. But globally, I think the market is actually big enough. For example, we are receiving a number of inquiries, with actually very strong interest from outside of China, because the challenges faced by the logistics customers are universal. Actually, across all economies, it's very difficult to hire a truck driver. And also, it is even more difficult to retain the truck driver. And safety is always a big challenge. And then there's an increasing demand for emission reduction. And that is actually all has been successfully addressed by our technology and our system. So we just focus on, we do a few things. First of all, we still focus on the technology itself. We try to scale it up. And along the process, we make the AI algorithm even more efficient and more advanced. And in the meantime, we make the system even more and more affordable. And with that, we believe that it will be natural sort of extension of our technology across different geography. I think that will be good enough for us. But in the meantime, I still see, for example, the visit of Elon Musk as a very good, very positive signal that people and companies can work across the border in this data-driven AI technology. And also, I think that I like the topic today for the practical AI. That actually can drive everybody work together, because when we talk about practical AI, it's about the advantage of the AI itself. It's also about scaling up, which means engineering complexity and also like a cost effectiveness. But combining everything together is actually even more challenging than just focus on the pure AI.
Well, I see people wearing the Whoop band a lot, but I also see people wearing a Whoop band and the Apple Watch together. Why are they wearing both? And are you at all concerned about the competition and that one day, if Apple can do what Whoop is doing, that people might just choose the Apple Watch?
Well, we've always had a big focus on health and fitness data. And I think Whoop is great at all the things it does for all the things that it doesn't do. So, we don't have a high-resolution screen. We don't have push notifications and emails and all sorts of recording and phone calls. These are just additional functionality that distract from the quality of health and fitness data. And so, as a consequence, we've been able to have really the most high-resolution health data and with a non-invasive form factor. And many people, it turns out, want to have a non-invasive form factor. They have enough screens in their life. Maybe they want to wear Whoop and an Apple Watch, or they want to wear Whoop in their own watch, or they want to wear Whoop and nothing else. And I think having a longer battery life and having higher quality data has been an important market positioning for us. Additionally, we've built a sensor that's really mostly worn using different fabrics and materials. So it's a product that people can accessorize and wear in different ways and also wear in different locations on their body. And all of these capabilities have made the product something that's easy to wear 24/7. When you think about the power of artificial intelligence with health data, it's really leveraging a unique data set, right? A lot of the AI capabilities are going to be commoditized over time. And so the question will be, well, what is the unique data set? We believe having really, really accurate 24/7 health data is a very differentiated health set.
I think we have time for one more quick question. And Raj, I'm going to come to you because I know that climate tech is a big priority for you. B Capital has just hired 2 executives really to focus solely on climate. But when I read that, I was also sort of struggling to understand that you have this commitment to climate tech, but you're also investing heavily in AI, which is so resource hungry. So how do you square both those?
It's a great question. I mean, our partners at BCG have been looking at the impact that AI can have in climate tech itself and saying that it can help reduce emissions by 5 to 10%. But on the flip side, AI and data centers are just huge consumers of energy. We're looking at investing in marketplaces around using renewable energy to fund a lot of data centers and AI power consumption. And I think you'll see that shift. What you're already seeing is that the big tech companies are making commitments to using renewable energies more and more. And they're going to become some of the biggest buyers of energy over the coming years. And I think you're going to see places like the GCC become really important for AI, both in terms of funding AI, but also in terms of the energy needs of AI.
Right on time. I'm sorry we're out of time. I know we could have gone on much longer, but Will, Raj, Julian, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Rick Gerson, co-founder, chairman of Alpha Wave, Jeffrey Katzenberg, founding partner of WonderCo, Vinnie Lauria, founding partner of Golden Gate Ventures, and Norse Wade, founder and managing partner of Global Ventures, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Jumana Bersecci.
Well, good morning. Very excited to be having this next conversation. Earlier on, I had a small interview, a shorter interview with His Excellency, the Minister of Communications over here in Qatar, and we were talking about what Qatar is doing on AI applications. And here we're going to get the perspective of VCs, investors, and how they're eyeing up the opportunity. I thought it was interesting that last year, I'm going to bring you some statistics. Venture funding for AI startups rose to 73 billion. So that's up 150% from where we were in 2017. Still short of the peak that we got to in 2021, but it does tell you that the trajectory and the hype is there around AI investing. So Rick, I'm just going to start with you because I know you're focused on growth investing. And quite simply, how are you picking the opportunities in this market? What are you looking for?
So that's a good question. There is an interesting framing that a close friend of mine explained to me recently. I don't know if anyone here ever listens to Founders podcast, David Senra. So he had the fortune of having dinner with Charlie Munger probably 2 months before he passed away. And we were having breakfast right after, and he told me that Charlie summed up for him how he and Warren realized over many decades that the key to selecting opportunities is going for great, is what he said. So David asked him, like, what does that mean, going for great? He said, well, great people are rare and great businesses are rare, but when you find them, you end up having less problems. And when he looked back on his 100 years, he noticed that when he didn't go for great, there ended up being a lot of problems. And I thought about it, and the things that we've done well all fit that. And the things that we've done poorly were at times when we didn't go for great. And so I use that as a way to frame this overreaching effort of selecting opportunities. And it's easy to make mistakes and to think something is great when it's not. But when I made mistakes in the past, I didn't even consider at the time, or I completely ignored at the time that I wasn't going for great. And so when I'm looking at the opportunity set today, there's a few ways that I think about benefiting from the massive, inescapable advancements in AI and not getting run over by it. I'll give you one example of a way not to get run over from it. It's a bit removed from AI, but experiences that nothing is going to come that's going to reduce the human desire to have amazing experiences. If anything, it's going to be even more important and more desired over time, not less. And so an example of an investment that we have that provides experiences is Amman Resorts. And so you couldn't get further from AI itself in something like that, but it benefits from an unending human trend. In AI specifically, we're trying to get involved with situations that will not be easily disrupted by rapid advancement, but instead are essential for leading the way. And an example is Cerebras, which is a chip company that makes the largest chip in the world, purposely built for AI, and absolutely annihilates any benchmarks. And then in traditional industries, we're involved with a company that is rolling up traditional businesses that are people-intensive, that are highly sticky, but that are inefficiently run. And when you use AI to solve basic problems in those businesses, the cost structure comes way down. So those are a few examples of how we look at it.
Yeah, Jeff, let me put the question to you. You were involved in early stage investing, incubation. To what extent do you think that helps you in this environment of many startups coming to the fore with AI potential applications, potential use cases? Do you feel like you have an advantage because you're starting with them from very early on?
Well,
Well, I don't think there's a right or a wrong. These are, just, I think different expertise that you develop. I think what's particularly exciting for the WonderCo team is finding those great entrepreneurs with great ideas early enough to really be able to bring value to them. I know everybody talks about that. Starting a company 0 to 1, I like to think is impossible, and 1 to 10 is improbable. And so getting on the journey, with young entrepreneurs and companies that have already achieved that 0 to 1, and where we can really help accelerate the 1 to 10, which is, by the way, the longest path. It takes 10 years to create a great company. That does not happen overnight.
Yeah.
But we are seeing, particularly in these last 3 to 5 months, a very, very compelling new crop of really interesting ideas. They're very much, they are AI focused. They are AI for enterprise primarily. So, last year I think was a transitional year. Certainly when you look at the sort of larger, the big players that are trying to sort of, battle the platforms, if you will. That's not a game that we're in, and certainly watching, 5 companies put $100 billion bets down is an amazing thing to, to see and to watch and to, handicap. But it's an exciting time, and we're, as I say,
there's a lot of fear, consternation, enthusiasm, but lots of question marks about what the advent of artificial intelligence means. I'm going to ask you just to wear your media hat for a second and give us a view of, how you think AI ultimately is going to affect us on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I really think there are 2 very distinct lanes, and I'm not sure people have really distinguished at least the way I think about them. There are AI tools that are available today. I would call them first or second generation tools that are very clear productivity tools applicable to the existing ecosystem of storytelling, whether it is movies or television. And I think they are going to be disruptive into certain types of jobs. Will probably be eliminated, but it's also going to create a whole nother set of opportunities, I think. And so that's the unknown, and I think it is kind of scary if you're in the center of that today. On the sort of more optimistic side of it, and one that's more about trying to look over the horizon and see what's coming, to me, the application of what will be the 3rd or 4th generation of AI. So think about what these tools will look like 18 or 36 months from now, given how fast they are evolving. I'm pretty confident there is going to be a new form of content. And the way to think about that is that, we had movies and television were sort of traditional form of content. The next generation was YouTube, driven by, created by user-generated content, and that really is what fueled YouTube. And we then saw how user-generated content fueled the next generation, which was TikTok. And I'm pretty confident there is a next generation coming that is unique and different from the content that we have today, which is when that 3rd or 4th generation of generative AI gets into UGC, user-generated. And I just think it's going to be explosive, and I think we're going to see content that is different from what we see today, and there will be an ecosystem built around it, and it will be borderless and democratized and global. And here we go.
Exciting. Okay, Vinnie, your company is headquartered in Singapore, and I know you've been involved with e-commerce, fintech payments, but just set the scene for us on what's been happening within the AI space in Singapore as well.
So Singapore has been pouring a lot of money on the R&D side, but it's Golden Gate Ventures' view that Singapore is an international business hub, and while there's a lot of consumer AI coming out of Silicon Valley, and that is truly the magnet, just like Hollywood is the magnet for global talent, there's a greenfield opportunity right now for AI for businesses, so B2B, enterprise, and that international cities actually have a little bit more of a competitive footing there against Silicon Valley. So a place like Singapore, where you have 80% of the world's international businesses have a major presence there if they're doing anything in Asia, reaching these service companies and selling services to them is actually a little bit easier than from the US, which tends to be very domestic and very inward-facing. So Golden Gate Ventures' view is that if you're going to be investing in AI outside of Silicon Valley, outside of the US, the greenfield opportunity is really B2B. And over the past 2 years, we've led 6 investments in this space that typically will start in Singapore and go global from there.
Noor, you've deployed capital, well, you mainly deploy capital into emerging markets. How much of the focus is tech, and how much of within tech recently has it been AI focused?
It's a great question, and I think it's not just becoming AI, it's old companies in the portfolio, old 3 to 4 years old, that are adopting AI and becoming AI-led. So as you mentioned, at Global Ventures, we invest across the Middle East and Africa. We've made about 63 investments in the last 6 years. Of those, 40% are now considered AI-led or AI-first. And that's just in the last 18 months. I think, to Vinnie's point, in emerging markets, companies are younger, they're more nimble, they're able to adopt and get there faster than perhaps companies that have more legacy infrastructure. So an example is one of our companies that we did the Series A and Series B in a couple of years ago is called Al-Tibbi, which means the doctor in Arabic. And they've just built the first Arabic LLM in healthcare that they've integrated with the Abu Dhabi government. And obviously, this started as a company that was a WebMD in the region with as much Arabic healthcare content as one could find, a few million unique visitors a month. So really the first port of call for, I'm not feeling well in Arabic, where do I go? From there, they grew and became one of the largest telemedicine companies in the region, which is relatively obvious because they have the funnel of people that are not feeling well, and they could easily monetize that into telemedicine. And now they've realized how much an AI could do with that, and so they've built it over the last year, now integrating it, and that'll be the first port of call for people that are not feeling well. So companies like that across our portfolio have really said, okay, this exists, now what do we do with it? They already have product market fit, they already have clients, they already have a team, right? So they're able to get there that much faster than someone who's just starting out saying, how can I use AI to solve this problem? So they're able to integrate it quickly, and that's what we're seeing. Yeah. As a company, we invest across all tech. This is particularly interesting right now.
I just want to go back to what Rick said at the beginning, which is you want to choose the good companies, you want to choose the winners.
The great companies.
Well, the great companies, yes, the great companies. What is your process in emerging markets?
So I think where we take a look at investing is that intersection of cutting-edge technology, so what is the world's best technology right now, to solve a problem that affects hundreds of millions of people. So you go to our website, it says we invest in mission-driven founders. Well, yes, they're mission-driven because this part of the world and our investment remit is 1.9 billion people, half are under the age of 30. And yet you take a look at what financial infrastructure existed. Very little. We were 85% unbanked 6 years ago. Now we're about 50% unbanked. Nobody built banks. So the question was, what technology can solve this problem? Healthcare is the same. We have 1 doctor per 1,000 people in MENA, 0.2 doctors per 1,000 people in Sub-Sahara. For context, Europe and the US have 4.5 per 1,000 people. No one's going to build hospitals to bridge that gap. We simply can't. We'll never have enough surgeons. So what tech can be used? And we invest in companies like Proximie, which does virtual surgeries. Now they've done 80,000 surgeries in the US, but built out of here, built out of Beirut originally, because of the problem of not enough surgeons getting to enough places as fast as you can. So taking that, what can technology provide, the best in the world technology, to solve problems that affect hundreds of millions of lives, massive TAM,
real-world TAM, not incremental solutions, but exponential solutions, and we get behind those.
Yeah, so it's, you have a problem looking for a solution, not a solution to a solution looking for a problem.
Exactly.
Rick, you're involved in private equity, private credit rather, and public markets, so it's an interesting composition of the portfolio. How do you set about identifying opportunities in this specific market? Because you can go down any one of those channels.
Yeah, so the way we operate is those three units, private equity, private credit, and public markets, are completely separate. So we have separate teams, separate focus, and so they each do different things. In the private equity business, our main focus is on growth equity of the kind of stuff that we're talking about today. In private credit, we loan money mostly to traditional businesses on a senior basis. And public markets, the idea is to try to have an uncorrelated return stream. So all three are a bit separate, but our work in the space that we're discussing in AI and AI-related things is inside of our private equity unit in our growth fund.
And how closely are you looking at opportunities in this part of the world right now?
We're looking.
That's it.
I mean,
having conversations.
In terms of the Middle East, yeah, so it's a region that has, depending on how you define it, something like 500 million people, and there's significant opportunity because there has not been a lot of dominance established yet, and so it leaves kind of a wide open field. And then if you go the other direction, in like a 3 or 4 hour flight, you end up in India, where we have a significant amount of exposure and do a significant amount of work. And there are some major trends playing there, which is really part of this region. I mean, it's closer to India from here than to half of the Middle East in terms of just flight time. And there's massive opportunity in India that we see.
Jeffrey, earlier on when I was speaking to His Excellency, the Qatari Minister of Communications, you were talking about the rise of data centers around this part of the world, which is also part of the whole AI ecosystem. How do you view the opportunity in the sense that it's not just, we're not just talking about the applications of AI, but everything that goes along with it, the ecosystem that will go along with it, be it data centers, be it chips, be it human capital?
Not our lane. So I really, other than I think like everybody else, following what would seem to be great opportunities for data centers here in this part, but they've already have them. They've been building them. They have them here in Doha and Abu Dhabi, and building them in other parts of the region. Obviously, the energy supply that is here, is a competitive advantage. But just the fact that there are 500 million people here, so all the big players are either here or on their way. So Microsoft and Google and Meta, and they're all well invested and continuing and see this as a place of opportunity. We hear that from the leaders and CEOs of those companies.
I would say in the region too, there has emerged one company out of Abu Dhabi that has done amazing work in AI, and it's Group 42.
Yeah.
And they recently signed a deal with Microsoft, which was quite groundbreaking. Microsoft invested $1.5 billion in Group 42, and they're collaborating in the region and beyond. And I think it's the first large-scale demonstration of AI success in the region as global best-in-class.
Yeah.
But they've been doing it for a very long time. It's a perfect example. They're not new to this. G42 has been, well over a decade of heavily invested around all aspects of AI, including infrastructure.
Yeah, and to echo the conversation that I had with His Excellency the Minister earlier, they had their AI vision put in place from 2019, so it's all around the region. You're seeing these types of initiatives pop up. Vinnie, I know that there has been a collaboration deal put together between Singapore and Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
How does that present opportunities to a firm like yours?
Yeah. So the Singapore GCC corridor has been historically pretty strong and has gotten stronger over the past few years. Singapore, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Qatar. So for the past 18 months, we've actually been doing exploratory trips with CEOs of billion-dollar companies, unicorns from Asia, bringing them into the region for expansion here. And we've had quite a few companies that have expanded quota payments into Saudi Arabia, multiplier into the UAE. So there's actually a strengthening, growing corridor between these two regions. And again, what I would look at it is if you've started a company here, startup, or in a place like Singapore, Indonesia, going to US or Europe are very competitive, very difficult markets. But for a company from this region looking towards Southeast Asia or vice versa, there's actually a lower level of competition, and so that's a greater opportunity for a startup. And that corridor, I think, is actually very, very valuable both for investors and startups.
Well, it has been a tough funding environment for many of these startup founders. Given your focus in the region, what do you tell them? What advice do you give to these founders?
So, I'll pick up from what Vinnie was talking about as well. In our part of the world, a lot of the founders do build regionally, and there are a lot that also build globally. We have about a dozen founders in the portfolio that have more revenues in the US or in Europe than they do in the region. And when we invested, they were only in the region. One of those includes a cybersecurity company based in Dubai that has more US revenue than regional revenue. So just to illustrate that the founders can compete globally, and similarly, they can raise money globally. So our founders have raised about $2.2 billion of subsequent funding since our investments, and we're a young firm. We've had about 5 exits. A lot of those founders have raised that through secondary for earlier investors. But also, I think what we can't forget is that the region's a bit different. So even as Series A investors, a quarter of our portfolio is EBITDA positive. And that's not because we select that, it's because the founders work that way to ensure capital efficiency, given how small the venture ecosystem is. So when we take a look at where are they going to get their next subsequent round of funding, to your question, it's really, part of it is regional. We've seen a lot of the international investors try to come into the region. Part of it's international, because many of these founders do scale globally. And then part of it is acquisitions or large families from the region. I think it has been a very tough fundraising environment the last year. Our founders have struggled, but they've struggled the same amount that they've always struggled being from the region. And people wondering, is there really innovation? Isn't there really innovation? Is it a local play? Can it become a global play? So I don't think it's any different. For us as a firm, we've managed to raise an entire fund in the last year. We started last March, a year and 2 months ago, and we've just covered our target. And this is one of the largest funds now. So again, it's been difficult, but I think people are seeing the opportunities in the region.
Yeah. Rick, I'm just going to give you the final word. Since we started off with your investing philosophy, what is one deal that got away?
That got away in terms of?
An opportunity that you wish you could have gone for and didn't at the time.
There was I remember we had this goes way back, but we had the term sheet to lead basically the seed or Series A round in Didi about 20 years ago. And we would have owned like 20% of the company for very little money. And we passed on it for extraneous reasons. And then of course that had a wild ride in the next 20 years. But I remember for a while that one kind of irked me. But I think the key to what all of us do is to try not to look back and live in the past with regret. It's one of the strongest human tendencies and emotions is to look back with regret. And it is somewhat counterproductive when you're focused on what you could have done, except of course to recognize the root of the error or the reason for the mistake. But there have been plenty of missed opportunities, and also opportunities that we did that we shouldn't have over the last decade. And so the idea is as Ryan Holiday titled his book, "The Obstacle is the Way."
Yeah. And you have to make sure the winners win big, ultimately.
Exactly. Win small and win big.
Yeah, that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now break for our networking lunch. Please feel free to join one of our breakout sessions happening at the Fairmont Hotel. I look forward to welcome you back here at 1:30 p.m.